Éliane was 25, but she already looked 35. Her once soft skin was worn from hardship, her clothes too large and threadbare, betraying years of struggle. She lived alone in a damp little room at the back of a crumbling apartment building, so run down that even the rats hesitated to enter. During the day, she wandered the streets in search of odd jobs, washing a car for a few coins, carrying a sack at the market in exchange for a small tip, handing out flyers under the scorching sun. But most days, she returned home empty-handed, with an empty stomach and a heart heavier than the day before. Some people are noticed the moment they walk into a room. Éliane was one of those people you forgot, even if they were already there. She had no real friends, just a few people who talked to her when they needed a favor, like taking out the trash, or when they wanted to feel good about themselves by offering her some pity. Her family? Lost to conflicts and debts years ago. No one called her. No one waited for her. Each evening, she slipped away to the edge of the sea, where no one ever came. Sitting on her favorite rock, her bare feet brushing against the moss, she gazed at the horizon. It was her only moment of peace. She dreamed with open eyes of money, beauty, respect. She pictured herself in a designer dress, dancing in a classy nightclub, camera flashes lighting up her face, people shouting her name. Then she'd wake up and go back to sleep in a dark room where the power cut off at the slightest rain. But that night something changed. The wind suddenly picked up, as if it carried a message. Éliane felt a shiver run down her spine. When she opened her eyes, a woman stood a few feet away. There was nothing ordinary about her. Her skin was as black as a moonless night, yet it shone like onyx. She wore a long white dress, seamless, that floated around her like a sacred cloud. There were no footprints in the sand beneath her, as if she didn't walk but glided through the air. "Are you happy, Éliane?" she asked. Éliane blinked. She had never seen this woman before, yet somehow she knew her name. "No," she whispered. "I'm poor. No one sees me. I matter to no one." The woman sat beside her, her gaze as deep as the ocean. She spoke softly, but every word struck like a drumbeat. "Do you want that to change?" "Of course." "Then listen to me. What you want, I can give it to you. Money, fame, beauty, power. You will become someone everyone wants to be around. A star. A legend. But there's a price." Éliane looked at her, without flinching. She had suffered too much to turn back now. What price? A pact. Every month, you must offer a life. Not by spilling blood. No. All you have to do is choose. Because once you give money to someone, even a single bill, that person becomes marked, linked to you. And when the time for sacrifice comes, their faces will flash before your eyes. You'll just have to pick one. And in return, your wealth will grow. Éliane felt her breath quicken. "And if I refuse to choose? You will lose everything. The money, the fame, the comfort. And worse, you will lose your peace. Because once light touches a shadow, it can never be unseen." A long silence followed. The sea had gone still. Even the wind had stopped. Éliane looked down at her empty hands. She thought about all those years of being nothing, to no one. Of all the humiliations. The nights without dinner. The birthdays forgotten. Then she raised her eyes, her heart pounding. "I accept." The woman smiled. Slowly, she placed her hand on Elaine's forehead. A strange warmth seeped into her skull. Something dark, but irresistible. "Tomorrow morning, your old life will be over." And in a gust of icy wind she vanished. Éliane remained there, alone on her rock. But for the first time, she felt like she existed. That morning, Éliane woke up in her decrepit little room, just like usual. The cracked ceiling, the smell of dampness, the old creaky mattress, everything was the same as the day before. Except for that chest, placed right at the foot of her bed. A black chest, elegant, antique. It had no reason to be there. Heart pounding, she approached it and slowly opened it and nearly fainted. Inside, stacks. Piles of neatly arranged bills. Millions. Exactly 10. Her hands trembled. She grabbed one bundle and brought it to her nose. the smell of fresh money. It was real. This wasn't a dream. Without thinking, she threw on an old dress, grabbed her plastic bag, and rushed outside. She got into a taxi, her gaze proud, her voice firm. "Take me to the most expensive boutique in the city." That day, she bought clothes she wouldn't have even dared to glance at a week before. A dress for 700,000 francs. A handbag for 2 million. She got long, natural extensions, lightened her complexion, made up her eyes and lips. No one recognized her anymore. Even her own reflection in the mirror looked like someone new. She booked a suite in a 5-star hotel on the top floor with a view over the city. The plush bed, the heavy curtains, the bubble bath. She laughed to herself, saying, "Is this really me?" That night, she made her first appearance at an upscale nightclub. Stiletto heels, slit dress, luxury perfume. The moment she entered, it was as if the music paused for a second. All eyes turned to her. "Who's that?" asked a guy near the bar. His friend shrugged. "I think it's Éliane, that girl from the poor neighborhood." "What? No way. The same one who wore torn clothes?" "Sure. Just enjoy. She's throwing money around. Now's not the time to ask questions. Take it, life's hard out there." And indeed, Éliane was making it rain. Entire bundles of bills thrown into the air. She made the poor and the rich dance alike, all hypnotized by her glow. Phones filmed her. Snaps were shared. Videos went viral. In just 2 days, she had become a local legend. But the following night, in the shadows of her luxurious suite, silence fell again. Éliane remembered the woman's words from the seaside. She sat at the edge of her bed, eyes closed. A strange chill filled the room, and suddenly faces appeared before her, floating in the air like holograms. The young waiter she had tipped generously. The beggar woman to whom she'd handed a bill without thinking. A neighbor from her old neighborhood she had gifted 10,000 francs. And him, a man she'd met in the club, to whom she had tossed 50,000 francs while throwing money around. The pact was real. All she had to do was choose one. Her hand hesitated. It hovered over the face of the old woman, then moved toward the young man. He had laughed with her, taken a photo, danced, drank. He had done nothing wrong. But he was marked. Éliane touched his face. The images vanished. The next day, news spread through the neighborhood. A man had been found dead behind a nightclub. No signs of violence. Nothing stolen. Just dead. People spoke of overdose, bad luck, mystery. Éliane said nothing. But when she returned to her suite, she found the chest filled again. 50 million this time. She stood before it, silent. She had just made her first sacrifice. And the money flowed like a dark, deep, dangerous river. She realized her life would never be the same again. And, strangely, a part of her, deep down, liked it. Since she was a child, Éliane had never set foot in an airport. Her world was limited to her neighborhood, to the sea where she sat in the evenings, to the poverty she knew so well. But today, she was leaving that world behind to discover a new one. Her first flight took her to France. Upon arrival, everything felt magical. The hustle and bustle of travelers, the bright lights, the scrolling screens, the crowd moving back and forth. It was like stepping into another universe. She stayed at the most expensive hotel in the city, a palace with sparkling gold details and lush gardens. Her room offered a breathtaking view over the rooftops, with a massive bed and crisp sheets. Every morning, she had breakfast at the hotel's Michelin-starred restaurant, tasting the most refined dishes she had never even dreamed of. Foie gras, smoked salmon, delicate pastries, everything was a first for her. On the street, passers-by looked at her with curiosity, admiring her new presence. Whenever she had the chance, in a cafe, a taxi, a boutique, Éliane gave out money. A simple gesture, yet it filled her with a strange satisfaction. After France, she flew to the United States. Life there had a different rhythm. She went to Los Angeles, strolled along Hollywood Boulevard, and saw celebrities she only knew from magazines. She laughed, danced in trendy clubs, and experienced parties where the music pulsed until dawn. She kept sharing money, smiling, enjoying the aura of generosity she radiated. People gathered around her, spoke to her, wanted to take pictures with her. Éliane was becoming a star in this new world. Then came other destinations: Tokyo, Cape Town, Dubai. Each time she experienced luxury without ever losing her simplicity. Every trip was an adventure, a conquest of a world she had never believed she could touch. And yet, despite the luxurious hotels, the exquisite meals, the lively parties, a persistent loneliness crept into her. Every night, in her hotel room, she felt a void. She had everything, except someone by her side. And sometimes, while gazing out at the illuminated city through her window, she wondered if all this wealth could ever truly fill that emptiness. Éliane was in Cape Town, staying in a refined hotel overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. That evening, she wore a simple yet elegant dress, and her jewelry sparkled under the dim light of the restaurant. As always, she radiated beauty, but inside, she was bored. Then he walked in, tall, in his elegant 50s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, with a calm stride and a confident gaze. His name was Maxwell. He didn't look at her like the other men did. No desire, no interest. He greeted her politely, sat at a nearby table, and quietly continued his dinner. That detachment intrigued Éliane. The next morning, she ran into him again in the elevator. This time, he gave her a slight smile. "Are you here for business, or just to relax?" "A bit of both," she replied, surprised by the softness of his voice. They started talking. First a coffee, then lunch, and by evening, a walk along the hotel's private beach. Maxwell had charm, intelligence, elegance, and above all, he never asked her about money. That was rare. One evening, in a playful moment, Éliane slipped a bill into Maxwell's pocket, laughing. "For your next coffee, Mr. Mysterious." But he looked at her seriously, pulled out the bill, and placed it on the table. "I don't need your money, Éliane. And I never accept money from anyone, especially not from a woman." She was speechless. It was the first time a man had ever refused. The first who didn't want to be touched by her money. The pact only worked if the person accepted her money willingly. This time, it hadn't happened. And the more she got to know him, the more she thought, maybe he's the one. The man I've been waiting for. He didn't look at her for what she had, but for who she was. And, most importantly, he was untouched. Outside the pact's trap. Éliane knew it. He wasn't marked. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't want to sacrifice. She just wanted to love. Since Éliane met Maxwell, everything felt softer. Her life no longer revolved solely around luxury or the gaze of others, but around a calm, sincere presence. He spoke to her about his dreams, his travels, his favorite books. He listened without judgment, never asked about her wealth or her past. For once, Éliane felt loved for who she was, not for what she owned. But the pact never forgets. The month was drawing to a close. And as always, Éliane had to make a choice. One night, alone in her room, she closed her eyes. The ritual began again. A red light, a faint buzzing. Then the faces started to appear. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Waiters, beggars, nightclub patrons, strangers she had thrown money at without even looking at them. She instinctively searched for Maxwell's face. A doubt, a fear. But nothing. He didn't appear. He wasn't part of the list. She smiled, relieved. He had remained pure. Probably because he had refused her money. Even the discreet envelope she had left one night on his table, he had either ignored it or handed it back to the hotel staff. He was intact, out of the pact's reach. Without hesitation, Éliane touched two faces. People she didn't know personally. Random silhouettes she had encountered in a nightclub in Lagos or Dubai. Once the choice was made, she felt the familiar cold on the back of her neck, then the eternal warmth rise in her chest. The next morning, her chest was full again. Another 150 million. With it, she bought a new villa on the French Riviera. A yacht for her and Maxwell. And most importantly, time. Time away from cameras, nightclubs, fake friends. She was learning to laugh with him, to cook with him, to walk without makeup through the narrow streets of cities she never would have dared to visit before. But a voice, deep inside her, kept whispering, "The pact isn't over. You may be living a pause, Éliane, but you're still paying for this happiness with the blood of others." She pushed the thought away. For now, she just wanted to live. Months had passed. Éliane now lived between 2 villas, 2 yachts, 2 continents. Each month, she fulfilled her macabre duty, then returned to live her perfect illusion with Maxwell. He suspected nothing. Always simple, always dignified. He still refused her money, laughing at her excessive generosity. But one day, the woman from the pact reappeared in her dreams. This time, she wore a red dress, darker than blood. Her face was grave. "You've reached the summit," she said bluntly. "So what?" "I've always kept my end of the bargain," Éliane replied, nervous. "Exactly. You've reached the final level. The next sacrifice must be the one your heart cherishes most." Éliane felt her blood run cold. Maxwell. She tried to reason with herself, to convince herself she could choose another face. But the faces were gone. Only one remained now, floating in the red mist. Maxwell. Again and again. She hesitated. One day. 2. Then she gave in. One evening, she locked herself in her room, heart heavy, eyes swollen. She touched Maxwell's face on the list. But instead of the usual cold nothing, the pact refused. A flash tore through the room. The woman's voice rang out, harsher than ever. "You cannot take him." "Why?" cried Éliane. "I did what you asked. He's here. He's on the list. You can't. He is protected." Éliane stood frozen, her hands trembling. His mother prays for him every night. His father sealed his fate with an ancient protection. You cannot break that circle. This man is untouchable. Éliane dropped to her knees. A tear fell. She tried to choose someone else, but the list was empty. "If you cannot offer a life, then the pact will take yours." And in a chilling breath, everything faded. Her vault emptied. Her walls turned gray. Her clothes crumbled to dust. Her nails, her hair, her skin all dried, cracked. She looked at herself in the mirror, but she no longer recognized the reflection. The pact was taking back what it had given. In one final cry, she tried to call out to Maxwell, but he heard nothing. He was sleeping peacefully in the next room. And she understood. It was the pact that had trapped her, and that evil should never be trusted. The next morning, they found Éliane dead, seated in her armchair, eyes open, staring into nothingness. Around her, no sign of wealth, no sign of struggle, just silence. And on the coffee table, a single black rose.